A single piece of meat can completely destroy a man's entire life. Leo stood in the bright, noisy agility arena. He felt perfectly happy and proud. His dog, Apollo, was a beautiful, smart border collie. They were the absolute best training team in the entire country. Today was the national final championship. Apollo barked happily and spun in fast circles. He was ready to win the shiny golden cup. Suddenly, a man named Trent walked over to them. Trent was Leo's biggest rival in the sport. He was a very cold, arrogant man. Trent wore an expensive jacket and a fake, friendly smile. He hated losing more than anything in the world. "Good luck today, Leo," Trent said smoothly. He reached into his deep pocket. He pulled out a small piece of expensive, dried beef. "A little treat for the champion?" Trent asked. Leo smiled and nodded his head. He trusted his fellow trainers. Apollo ate the tasty treat very quickly. It was a terrible, life-changing mistake. Trent walked away with a dark, cruel look in his eyes. Trent had secretly injected the beef with a very strong chemical. It was a heavy medical drug used to clear a dog's stomach. It was designed to act fast and cause extreme, sudden pain. The loud arena buzzer rang sharply. Leo and Apollo ran onto the green field. The crowd cheered wildly for their favorite team. Apollo jumped over the first 3 hurdles perfectly. He was as fast as the wind. But at the 4th jump, something went terribly wrong. Apollo stopped moving completely. The beautiful dog cried out in sudden, sharp pain. He collapsed heavily onto the soft grass. His body shook violently. He lost total control of his stomach right there on the field. The crowd gasped in shock and disgust. The referee immediately blew his whistle. Disqualified, the referee shouted loudly over the big speaker. Leo fell to his knees in panic. He hugged his sick dog, crying and calling for a medical doctor. Trent stood on the side, smiling secretly. Trent easily ran the course next and won the championship cup. But the dark nightmare was not over for Leo. An hour later, the official tournament animal doctor examined Apollo. The doctor walked out with a serious face. "This dog was poisoned by rotten, dirty garbage," the doctor announced to everyone. The reporters quickly wrote down his shocking words. Leo was completely confused. Leo did not know that Trent had secretly paid the doctor a lot of money. Trent bribed the man to change the blood test results. Trent wanted to destroy Leo's reputation forever. The fake news spread across the internet very quickly. Everyone believed the terrible lie. The news said Leo fed his dog cheap, rotten food to save money. People called him a cruel animal abuser. Within 2 days, all of Leo's rich sponsors canceled their contracts. The bank took his famous training center. Leo lost his money, his business, and his honor. The world is very cruel when you fall from the top. 6 months later, Leo had absolutely nothing. He lost his beautiful home and his successful business. To buy simple food, he had to take a terrible job. He became a cleaner at a dirty, sad animal shelter. Every day, Leo washed dirty floors and cleaned cold metal cages. The shelter smelled like strong chemicals and deep sadness. One morning, Leo sat on a cheap plastic chair. He read an old newspaper. The news made his broken heart hurt even more. The bank had sold his famous training center at a public auction. The buyer was Trent. Trent bought Leo's dream for a very cheap price. He changed the name to the Elite Trent Academy. Trent was stealing Leo's past to build his own rich future. Leo put the newspaper down and wiped a single tear from his face. He walked to the manager's office to get his cleaning tools. On the desk, he saw a bright red piece of paper. It was the daily euthanasia list. It was a list of death. These were the dogs that the shelter would kill today because they were too sick or too dangerous. Leo read the names sadly. One note caught his attention. It described a mixed-breed dog named Barnaby. Barnaby was scheduled to die in exactly 1 hour. The shelter notes said Barnaby was extremely aggressive and completely crazy. Yesterday, a loud thunderstorm hit the city. Barnaby panicked and bit a worker's hand very badly. The shelter decided the dog was too dangerous to live. Leo felt a strange pull in his heart. He knew what it felt like to be abandoned and misunderstood. Leo dropped his mop and ran down the dark hallway. He ignored the strict rules. He opened the heavy door to the isolation room. It was a cold, dark place where the dangerous dogs waited for the end. In the corner of a dirty cage, Leo saw him. Barnaby was a small, ugly, mixed-breed dog. His fur was missing in many places. He was terribly thin. Barnaby was shaking violently, pressing his small body against the cold wall. He looked completely terrified. Barnaby showed his teeth and growled softly. It was not a sound of anger. It was a sound of pure, desperate fear. This dog had been abused and beaten by cruel humans for a very long time. Leo knelt down slowly. He looked into the dog's sad eyes. "I will not let you die today," Leo whispered gently. He did not care about the rules anymore. He walked to the manager's office and used his last bit of saved money. He officially adopted the dangerous dog. Leo carried the shaking animal out into the warm sunlight. Leo lived in a very tiny, dark apartment. It was quiet, but it did not feel safe to the broken dog. As soon as they entered the room, Barnaby ran away. He squeezed his thin body deep under the old bed. He hid in the darkest corner. For 2 full days, Barnaby refused to come out. He did not eat or drink. Whenever Leo walked near the bed, Barnaby growled loudly. He showed his sharp teeth, warning Leo to stay away. Leo wanted to help, so he tried a classic training method. Leo cooked a piece of expensive, fresh beef. It smelled wonderful. He placed the meat on the floor near the bed. He hoped the hungry dog would come out to eat. But Barnaby did not move. In fact, the dog started to shake even harder. Barnaby's growling became louder and more frantic. Leo suddenly realized his terrible mistake. The meat was not a reward to this abused dog. In Barnaby's past, his cruel owner probably used fresh food as a trap. When the dog came out to eat, the owner beat him. Food was a signal for pain. Leo threw the meat in the garbage. He decided to throw away all the traditional training rules. He needed to speak to Barnaby using Paw Logic. It was the deep, silent language of dogs. It was the language of pure safety. Leo lay down flat on the hard wooden floor. He did not face the bed. He turned his back completely to the hidden dog. In dog language, turning away means you are not a threat. Then, Leo began to use calming signals. These are natural body movements dogs use to calm each other down. Leo closed his eyes and breathed very slowly. He opened his mouth and yawned a long, loud yawn. He did this every 10 minutes. Yawning tells a scared dog that the environment is completely peaceful. Leo did not speak. He did not reach his hand out. He just lay there, blinking slowly and yawning. The apartment was filled with total silence and calm energy. Hours passed. Slowly, the angry growling under the bed stopped. The silence felt heavy but safe. On the third evening, Leo heard a very soft sound. It was the sound of small paws on the wooden floor. Leo did not turn around. He kept his eyes closed and yawned again. He felt a wet, cold nose touch his hand very gently. Barnaby had finally crawled out from the dark trap. The dog was still shaking, but he chose to trust the silent human. Barnaby slowly rested his small, tired head on Leo's open hand. Leo smiled in the dark. The deep healing process had officially begun. Love is a powerful medicine, but physical strength takes time to rebuild. Barnaby was very weak. Leo wanted to give the dog a purpose again. They needed to practice agility training, but Leo had no money. He could not afford a fancy training center. So, Leo used the public city park. He searched the local garbage bins for free materials. He collected old plastic buckets, broken wooden brooms, and dirty car tires. He built a strange, funny obstacle course on the public grass. It was a playground made of trash. Every morning, Leo and Barnaby practiced. Leo never used a tight collar or angry words. They communicated with soft clicks and happy smiles. Barnaby was incredibly smart. He learned to jump over the brooms and run through the tires with beautiful, natural speed. One afternoon, a shiny black car stopped near the park. Trent stepped out. He was walking his new, expensive purebred dog. Trent saw Leo playing in the garbage. A cruel smile appeared on Trent's face. He pulled out his modern mobile phone to record a video. "Look at the great Leo." Trent laughed loudly, pointing his camera. "He is training a dirty street rat with broken trash. This is completely pathetic." Trent's loud voice attracted a crowd of people in the park. They pointed at Leo's trash course and started to laugh. The noise was sudden and very loud. Usually, sudden noise caused Barnaby to panic and run away in extreme terror. He suffered from severe sound trauma. Leo's heart dropped. He expected Barnaby to hide under a bench. But the Paw Logic training had changed the dog's soul. Barnaby did not freeze. He did not run away. Instead, the small dog jumped over a plastic bucket and ran directly to Leo. Barnaby stood firmly in front of Leo's legs. He faced the laughing crowd and the arrogant Trent. Barnaby stood tall and proud. This was a psychological behavior called resource guarding. Usually, dogs guard food or toys. But Barnaby was guarding his most precious resource, his human father. His love for Leo was now much stronger than his dark fear of loud noises. The crowd suddenly stopped laughing. Trent stopped recording. He looked at the brave little dog in surprise. Barnaby did not bark or bite. He just stared at Trent with calm, powerful eyes. The street dog was protecting his family. Leo knelt down and hugged Barnaby tightly. "You are ready, my brave boy," Leo whispered softly into the dog's ear. He knew Barnaby's mind was fully healed. It was time to return to the professional world. It was time to show everyone the true power of love and silent understanding. The National Agility Championship was only 1 month away. Leo walked into the grand registration office with a hopeful heart. He wanted to enter Barnaby as an independent competitor. He filled out the forms carefully. But the woman behind the desk pushed the papers back to him. "I am sorry, Leo," she said coldly. The rules have completely changed this year. You cannot enter this dog. Leo frowned in confusion. Why not? I have always competed. The woman pointed to a new poster on the office wall. Mr. Trent is the new president of the sports committee, she explained. He made a strict new rule. Only dogs with expensive, purebred pedigree papers can compete. Street dogs and mixed breeds are officially banned from the national tournament. Leo felt a wave of deep anger. Trent had built a legal wall to keep him out. Trent wanted to make sure Leo could never return to the sport. Leo took his papers and walked out into the cold wind. He felt totally defeated. That night, Leo sat in his small apartment. Barnaby slept peacefully on the rug. Leo drank cheap coffee and read the heavy, official rule book of the organization. He read thousands of boring pages from the last 50 years. He was searching for a miracle. At 3 o'clock in the morning, his tired eyes found a tiny, forgotten paragraph. It was a very old rule from 40 years ago, long before Trent was born. It was a secret loophole in the strict legal system. Leo smiled a huge, happy smile. The old rule stated that a mixed-breed dog could legally bypass the pedigree requirement. But there was a very difficult condition. The dog had to pass the highest level of the Canine Good Citizen test. It was an extremely hard psychological exam for dogs. Even worse, the test had to be personally judged by a senior, veteran referee. Leo knew this was their only chance to fight Trent. The next morning, Leo called the organization. He requested this special test based on the old, forgotten rule. The committee was shocked, but they could not break their own historic laws. They agreed to send their oldest, most strict judge to test Barnaby. The test would happen in 1 week. If Barnaby passed, they would be in the championship. If he failed, their dream was over forever. The testing day arrived. The veteran judge was a serious old man with a clipboard. He watched Barnaby closely. Barnaby performed the first tasks perfectly. He ignored strange dogs, walked nicely on the leash, and stayed completely calm when strangers touched him. Leo was incredibly proud. The final task was the most difficult. It was designed to test a dog's nerves in extreme situations. The judge raised a metal starting gun into the air. He had to fire a loud, blank shot. Dogs must not panic when they hear the explosion. "Ready?" the judge asked. Leo nodded. Bang! The loud noise echoed across the empty field. Instantly, Barnaby froze. The brave dog collapsed onto his stomach. He began to shake violently, and he lost control of his bladder. He was completely terrified. The judge shook his head sadly and began to write "failed" on his paper. Leo rushed forward and hugged his shaking dog. "It is okay, buddy," Leo whispered. As Leo held Barnaby close, he smelled something very strange on the dog's fur. It was a heavy, expensive men's cologne. Leo recognized that unique smell immediately. It was Trent's custom cologne. Leo looked up towards the visitor bleachers. Trent was standing there, watching them with a cruel smile. He had walked past Barnaby just before the test began. Suddenly, a horrible, dark truth hit Leo's mind. Leo looked closely at Barnaby's twisted ear and the unique spots on his back. Trent ran a very famous, expensive breeding program for hunting dogs. Trent bred dogs to not be afraid of guns. But sometimes, a dog was born with a natural fear of loud noises. Barnaby was not just a random street dog. He was one of Trent's expensive puppies. Barnaby was born with a fear of noise, making him a defective hunting dog. Instead of helping him, Trent had thrown the young puppy away into the garbage. This led Barnaby to the cruel, abusive owners. Barnaby's extreme panic was not just about the loud gunshot today. The dog had smelled Trent's cologne before the test. The phantom trauma of the cruel man who first abandoned him had completely paralyzed his mind. Trent had returned to destroy him again. Leo felt a burning anger in his soul. The evil man had caused all of this innocent dog's pain from the very beginning. Leo held Barnaby tighter. The sport did not matter anymore. He only wanted to protect his loyal friend from this dark monster. Leo stood up and looked at the veteran judge. "We withdraw," Leo said in a clear, firm voice. "The test is over. My dog's mental health is more important than any trophy." Leo refused to force his dog to suffer for human glory. Leo gently picked up the heavy leash. He started to walk away from the field. He wanted to take Barnaby back to their safe, quiet apartment. But suddenly, the leash pulled tight in his hand. Leo stopped and turned around in surprise. Barnaby did not want to leave. The small dog pulled against the collar. Suddenly, Barnaby bit the leather leash with his teeth and pulled it hard. The leash snapped out of Leo's hand. Barnaby picked up the broken end in his mouth and walked back. He walked directly toward the spot where he had failed. He dropped the leash at Leo's feet. Barnaby turned his head and stared straight up at the bleachers. He looked directly into Trent's cruel eyes. The dog was not shaking anymore. Barnaby was using Paw Logic. He was choosing to face his deepest fear voluntarily. He wanted to protect Leo's dream. The veteran judge watched this incredible moment. The old man frowned. He noticed something strange about Trent's hand up in the bleachers. "Wait a moment," the old judge said loudly. He walked over to the security camera station. He rewound the videotape to the exact second before the gun fired. He zoomed in on Trent's face. The camera caught a small, shiny metal object in Trent's mouth. It was a silent dog whistle. It produced an extreme, high-frequency sound that humans could not hear, but it caused terrible pain to a dog's sensitive ears. Trent had blown the whistle secretly just before the gunshot to ensure Barnaby panicked and failed. The judge's face turned bright red with anger. "Sabotage," the veteran judge declared loudly. "That man used an illegal device to hurt the animal." He crossed out the word "failed" on his clipboard. He wrote "passed with honors" in bright blue ink. The judge handed the official paper to Leo. "You and your brave dog are going to the championship," he smiled warmly. Trent quickly ran away from the bleachers to hide. Leo knelt down and kissed Barnaby's head. They had defeated the shadows of the past. The grand final of the national championship was incredibly loud and exciting. Thousands of fans watched the bright television screens. Trent stepped onto the field with his new $1 million purebred dog. The dog looked like a perfect, beautiful athlete. The crowd cheered loudly. The buzzer rang. Trent's dog ran the course with incredible, blinding speed. It jumped the hurdles and ran through the tunnels exactly like a programmed machine. Everyone clapped, amazed by the perfect performance. But Leo watched the giant television screen very closely. Leo was an expert in Paw Logic. He saw the dark truth that the cheering crowd missed. The beautiful dog had whale eye, meaning the whites of its eyes were showing in pure terror. It also licked its lips constantly. These were signs of extreme, massive stress. Trent was not leading with love. He was leading with fear. When the camera zoomed in, Leo saw something terrible hidden under the dog's stylish neck bandana. It was a cruel, illegal spike collar. Trent was secretly hurting the dog to force it to run faster. The dog reached the hardest obstacle, the weave poles. Because the dog was running in blind panic, it slipped on the grass. The dog missed a pole. Trent lost his temper instantly. He screamed a harsh, violent command that echoed through the stadium. The aggressive shout was the final drop of water in a broken cup. The purebred dog could not take the pain and fear anymore. Instead of correcting the mistake, the dog turned around. It growled fiercely, showing its teeth at its cruel master. The dog reached up with its back leg and aggressively scratched the painful spike collar off its neck. The collar fell to the grass. The dog turned and ran completely away from the obstacle course, hiding under a judge's table. Trent yelled and tried to catch the dog, but it was too late. The referee blew the whistle loudly. Eliminated. The stadium fell into shocked silence. Trent's mechanical perfect run was ruined by his own cruelty. He walked off the field in absolute, humiliating defeat. It was finally Leo and Barnaby's turn. They walked onto the center of the massive, bright arena. The crowd was very loud, shouting and clapping. The heavy noise made Barnaby stop walking. He lowered his head and his tail tucked slightly. He was getting nervous. Leo stopped walking, too. He knelt down in the middle of the field. Before the millions of people watching on live television, Leo did something crazy. He reached down and completely unclipped Barnaby's leash and collar. He threw the collar onto the grass. There were no tools, no spikes, and no forced commands. There was only an invisible leash made of pure trust. The buzzer rang loudly. Leo did not yell. He simply started to run, smiling joyfully. Barnaby looked at his human and followed him happily. They did not look like a master and a machine. They moved together like two dancers sharing a beautiful secret. Barnaby flew over the hurdles with natural grace. But then they reached the teeter-totter. It was a heavy wooden board that made a loud, scary bang when it hit the ground. Barnaby stopped at the bottom of the board. The memory of loud noises and pain flashed in his mind. The entire stadium went totally silent, waiting to see if the rescue dog would fail. Trent smiled from the shadows. Leo stopped running, but he did not push the dog. Leo used Paw Logic. He turned his side to Barnaby. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and yawned a long, exaggerated yawn. It was the ultimate calming signal. Leo was telling Barnaby, "I am perfectly calm, and you have the choice to walk away." Barnaby looked at the heavy board, and then he looked at Leo's peaceful face. The dog realized he was not forced to do anything. He was safe. Barnaby wagged his messy tail. He ran up the board confidently and slammed it down. Bang! He didn't flinch. He jumped off and sprinted toward the final tunnel like a speeding bullet. He crossed the finish line with a massive, happy bark. The giant digital clock stopped. They had broken the national time record by a full 3 seconds. The stadium exploded with wild, joyful cheers. People were crying and clapping. Barnaby jumped into Leo's arms, licking his face happily. The Golden Championship Cup was finally theirs. The rescue dog had defeated the cruel, $1 million machine. It was a beautiful miracle. Immediately, The rich corporate sponsors ran onto the field. These were the same companies that had abandoned Leo months ago. They held out shiny pens and heavy checks worth millions of dollars. They begged Leo to sign new contracts and represent their expensive brands. Leo looked at the greedy men. He took the expensive checks in his hands. Then, right in front of the television cameras, he slowly tore the checks into tiny pieces. He let the paper fall like snow onto the grass. He refused to sell his soul again. "I don't train for money anymore," Leo spoke into a reporter's microphone. "I will use my championship prize money to build something real. I am opening a free psychological rehabilitation center for abused rescue dogs. We will heal them with Paw Logic and love." The crowd cheered even louder. The sports committee opened a serious investigation into Trent's cruel methods. The police found the illegal spike colors. Trent was permanently banned from the sport and lost his training license forever. His fake, arrogant empire was completely destroyed. 1 year later, Leo walked through the green grass of his new, beautiful sanctuary. Barnaby ran happily beside him, playing with a tennis ball. The center was full of happy rescue dogs learning to trust humans again. A large animal rescue truck pulled into the driveway. Leo walked to the truck to welcome the new arrivals. The back door opened slowly. A nervous, beautiful purebred dog stepped out onto the grass. It was Trent's old championship dog. It had been rescued from the closed, bankrupt academy. The dog looked at Leo with scared, tired eyes. It expected pain and loud shouting. Leo did not reach out his hand. He simply lay down on the soft grass, turned his back, and yawned softly. The new dog watched carefully, and for the first time, its tail wagged.